Briefly, my thoughts on this. I've talked about this before, but briefly for you guys, I tend to believe that human beings are complicated creatures that have multiple components to them: an intellectual component, a spiritual component, an emotional component, and a physical component. I'll say that again: intellectual, emotional, spiritual, and physical. It's at least these four, right? And the problem is, if, for example, you are living a decent life, but you know intellectually you're capable of much more, you're not exercising your mind to its fullest, you will still be dissatisfied. Something is missing. Even if you're praying spiritually, emotionally, all your relationships are okay, physically you're in good health, intellectually there's a gap and it leaves you with an emptiness. Similarly, there are people that are intellectually fulfilled, they are spiritually on point, they are physically okay, but emotionally they've got some problem. They have a terrible relationship with their mother. They don't get along with their spouse. Or they have a deep sadness inside them because of something that happened and they're never able to cope with it. Something like that. There's something missing. So this time, it's not the spiritual or the physical that's missing, it's the emotional that's missing. Other times, it's the physical. Like you're sick, right? Now the thing is, these four things are not four different boxes in myself. These are connected to each other. So when I'm fasting, for example, I sleep a lot. Okay? And you know what? When I'm fasting, I'm not able to concentrate and study as much. I'm just not able to do it. So the physical affected my what? It affected my intellectual. It did. Directly. Or outside of Ramadan, when I'm hungry, I'm not in a good mood. I'm hangry. Okay? I'm Hungarian. Okay? So when I'm hungry, so what is the physical is now affecting what? The emotional. The emotional. What I'm trying to get at is sometimes what you feel like is an emptiness, we think every time there's a problem, it's a spiritual problem. But the spiritual gets affected by the physical, the emotional, and the intellectual. Those three start having an impact on the spiritual. So somebody, for example, says, I just feel so hopeless. What dua can I make? And I'm like, hold on, where did the hopeless come from? I keep having an argument with my mom. So the problem here is an emotional one. And you're thinking the problem is a spiritual one. And you want a dua to solve this problem. Well, while you're making the dua, you're still having the same argument with your mom over and over again. And you haven't actually addressed the root problem. And you think now this is becoming yes, it can become a spiritual crisis because you didn't address the thing that was causing the spiritual crisis. Sometimes it's something physical that's causing a crisis. Sometimes it's something emotional. Sometimes it's something intellectual that's causing a crisis. Sometimes it's not something you can change. A disability, I can't change it. It's Allah's hands. Sometimes it's a situation like a relationship like Abu Lahab. That's the Prophet's uncle. You can't change uncles. You're just stuck with whatever you got. You can't change it. Then you have to learn to live with that problem and not allow that to affect your spirituality, and stop making delusional prayers or thinking that somehow if I pray, then Abu Lahab tomorrow he'll turn into Hamza. He is who he is, right? I can make dua for everyone's guidance, but in the end, they have to make their decision. A lot of times people's hopelessness comes from their inability to make someone else change. We're obsessed with making somebody else change according to our expectations. So that would be my 2 cents on the emptiness of the heart. But I also think that meaningful company, meaningful experiences,